Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar on the electrification opportunity in the UK and the northeast of England. My name is Latham French. I'm the Department for International Trade Sector Director for the future of mobility in North America. So that's aerospace, automotive, and the supply chain, including EV batteries. I'm based in Toronto, Canada. I'm really excited to welcome you all to this webinar to learn about the opportunity in the northeast of England. It includes some really interesting opportunities around the growth of Nissan and Envision in Sunderland and Britishvolt's gigafactory near Blythe. Quickly to highlight DIT's presence in North America for any British companies on the call or US companies. We have offices across the region, starting with Los Angeles and Vancouver in the west, and then going east, you have Montreal and New York. We support North American investors looking to grow their presence in the UK and UK exporters looking to enter the North American market. Our team is very happy to speak to any companies that are considering opportunities in the UK and North America. And yeah, we look forward to connecting with you. I'll just move my slide along here. So just quickly to touch on our speakers for today. First off will be Martin Wood. He's my colleague based in London HQ. So Martin's our automotive lead for the Department for International Trade, and he is a sector specialist for zero emission vehicles. So thanks for joining, Martin. Next up, we have Colin Heron, who is a professor of practice at Newcastle University. He leads up the regional office for the Faraday Institute, and he's the managing director of Zero Carbon Futures. He is also the chair of the newly established Northeast Battery Alliance. And then finally, we have Michelle Duggan, who is the Inward Investment Manager at Invest Northeast England, and she specializes in advanced manufacturing with a particular focus on electrification. I pulled up the slide for the agenda, and we are going to jump over to Martin to begin the first part of our presentation. So Martin, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Latham, and great to be with everyone today to talk about such an important topic. So with no further ado, I'll go on to the content that I've prepared for today. So the first message is one of strategy, which is, of course, vital for business. What does the strategy look like and where's the certainty? So within the 10-point plan for green industrial revolution that has been created and propagated by the government, we are focusing on the shift to zero emission vehicles, which is point 4 within the box. As you can see, with all 10 parts of the 10-point plan, it's a very comprehensive strategy, and the shift to zero emission vehicles is certainly far-reaching. Now, within that shift, what are the key things that are relevant for today? Well, firstly, on the market side, on the market pull side, the banning of petrol and diesel new car and new van sales from 2030 with a grace period of 5 years for hybrids is fundamental to drive certainty into the market. And then on top of that policy intervention, there's a number of pieces and policy support for companies. For example, you see here on this slide the Faraday Battery Challenge, which I'm sure Colin will talk further on. Which is basically for R&D, for fundamental research and for industrial scale-up for batteries. And you see on the other side of the slide, on the right side of the slide, the Driving the Electric Revolution Challenge, which is again looking to anchor the supply chains in the UK to support innovation and CR&D, and of course, to support those all-important skills. So what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit more about each one of those, but not dwell too much. As I mentioned, Colin is probably going to touch further on that in his piece. And the part of the Faraday Battery Challenge that I'm really going to focus on is actually the industrial scale-up side of the challenge, which is very much my core remit. But without jumping too quickly onto the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre, it's worth saying that what's open for business in the UK is this collaborative R&D space through programmes run through the Faraday Battery Challenge and the Faraday Institution. And I really do encourage companies to engage in that programme. So moving on to the industrialisation part of Faraday, I wanted to touch on the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre, which is based in the middle of the country in Coventry. And of course, that's a great location for companies all around the UK to access the considerable resources. So whether companies are in the southwest or in Wales or broader in Scotland or the northwest of England, and of course in the northeast of England. And what we have there is a government-funded approximately 2 gigawatt hour facility where companies can trial new materials, new processes at scale in order to de-risk their own production after that period. And what's great about UK BIC or UK Battery Industrialisation Centre, it's not an idea, it's an executed plan. So this is fully up and running. Companies are already enjoying the resources and the processes and the expertise within the UK Battery Industrialisation Centre. And very much our strategy is that companies that engage in that programme with UK BIC, with those engineers, then look to invest in the UK. And of course, the Northeast is a great location within the UK to invest. I'm going to touch briefly on driving the Electric Revolution Challenge also, and a comprehensive programme, 80 million of funding, which is really focusing on the power electronics, motors and drives piece of this move to electrification. Of course, batteries are vitally important, but if we don't have the relevant control electronics and we don't have the relevant electric machines to drive the vehicles, whether they're cars, whether they're trains, whether they're boats or aero, then of course we won't actually get anywhere. So the DER is looking to support building supply chains. It's looking to help de-risk company investments through their industrial centres, so companies can trial equipment, maybe book an hour or 2 hours on that equipment and test whether the equipment works for them before they actually then go and purchase it. One thing that I wanted to touch on as well within this section is DR do an awful lot of networking, as Faraday do, as Colin's own organisation does, as Michelle and Latham do for the wider investor community, and that really can't be undervalued. Meeting companies, finding common ground, and perhaps a reason and a way to collaborate. The final thing I wanted to touch on, which I've already intimated, is the support for skills development, which is so vital as we take this critical transformation from the internal combustion engine to zero emission technology, whether it's battery or whether indeed it's hydrogen fuel cell. It's vital that we have those skills, that we encourage young people to move into these areas, and we also retrain and reskill existing workforce. The last slide, not the last slide, the latest slide here, you see the buckets of money that have been prepared for each of these parts of the programme. So considerable government support from the Faraday Battery Challenge and driving the Electric Revolution Challenge towards £500 million sterling. So I've talked about support, and at the release of the 10-point plan and the confirmation of the 2030 phase out of petrol and diesel, UK government has done a number of other policy intervention, or launched a number of other policy interventions to support and de-risk. So firstly, which I've not touched on, a further £1.4 billion towards charging infrastructure and charge points, which of course are so vital as we all move to electric vehicles, but also for companies wishing to invest in the supply chains. These are big ticket investments. So we've got 850 million of a 1 billion program to support and de-risk those investments, whether it's gigafactories, whether it's anode or cathode material, whether it's fuel cell membranes, whether it's power electronics, or whether it's electric drive units. The support is there and available. And indeed, I reflect that companies in the Northeast have already submitted applications into the Automotive Transformation Fund through the program, which is an expression of interest, a rolling monthly gateway, you could think of it as. And beyond this core 850 million of capital funding support, there's also smaller chunks of that money that are put aside for so-called feasibility studies. So companies that are looking to invest, but perhaps they need to work something through, maybe it's financial or economic, or maybe it's technical. There's also support available through our feasibility study program, which is 50% funded by government. And of course, our intent there that we encourage businesses to de-risk and then invest. I guess the last point I wanted to make, just as we stop for a moment on this slide, is the Automotive Transformation Fund is not the only tool and not the only support available. We've got extremely generous capital allowances in the UK for companies that are already trading or companies that are soon to trade. We have a number of areas that have been designated free ports, which come with benefits such as capital allowances, enhanced capital allowances, or indeed duty opportunities, or for example, a relaxation on employers' national insurance, which makes employing people cheaper. And beyond that, of course, we have the might of the world's oldest state credit agency, the UK Export Finance, with a number of programs to support investing businesses that may then be looking to export. So looking at time, I'll try and speed up very slightly. So really, where are we with that? So I've given you a policy kind of framework. I've given you some support policy. Where have we got to? So we've announced in the past 12 months the first 2 gigafactories at scale. Of course, the UK enjoyed the status of having the first gigafactory in Europe in the northeast of England with Envision AESC's investment there. And we as DIT and other partners within government and local partners, we're pushing for the next gigafactory investors. There's an increasing focus on the hydrogen space because there are some areas of transportation within industry that may well look to use fuel cells alongside the battery electric that we're perhaps more familiar with. PEMD investments have been made and there's further strategic opportunities in preparation. Just a quick watch out that there's a new program from Faraday coming, 25 million. The Automotive Transformation Fund I've touched on, we've just closed feasibility study round 3, another 10 million of match funding. And frankly, DIT certainly remain here to support companies wishing to reshore, let's call them traditional commodities that will enable the electrification transformation that we're looking for, because a lot of this does rely on what as engineers might consider to be more traditional commodities, whether it's stamped parts, cast parts, plastics, whatever. So I'm just going to finish, as I tend to like to, with a few pictures, because there's nothing quite like seeing facts to be clear that things have happened. And I start in the center of the picture, the Northeast, with the EV hub that Nissan announced last year, including the Envision battery facility, an excellent an excellent piece of investment news, and great for the region and great for the UK. Beyond that, Ford have committed electric drive unit production into the northwest of the UK. Teva with electric truck mass production in the southeast of England. Back to the northwest with Stellantis at Ellesmere Port, electric vans, multi-brand. Bentley's pledged to move their range to all electric, 2.5 billion invested. TVS and the transition of Norton motorcycles, Volta trucks R&D, and Rimac R&D as well. So a lot of investments made in the UK last year from the OEM level. And in fact, I reflect that the SMMT views that there's been around 11 billion spent in the last decade on this exciting electrification journey. And then to wrap up really on the supply chain, I've already touched on Envision, top left. The Northeast also captured Britishvolt there in Northumberland. Again, a 30 gigawatt hour approximate, slightly more in fact, battery facility. But as important as the big flagship investments are the materials that drive it. So Semcor welcoming Tees Valley Lithium, lithium hydroxide and carbonate, and we're working on other lithium projects. Going to bottom right, Cornish Lithium unlocking funding from TechMet last year, and of course there are other lithium opportunities within the UK, both in Cornwall, in the northeast, and indeed in the northwest. And maybe just finishing this part as we are talking all things northeast, Matt Boyle and Turntide investing in 3 great businesses in the northeast to use them as a springboard to grow within the region and create world-class solutions for customers. So in summary, we're continuing on an aggressive decarbonisation path, and with our legal commitment towards net zero, and zero emission vehicles are really a key part of that program. So we're continuing at pace. There will for sure be more announcements coming. We've landed our first 2 at scale battery gigafactories to build on top of where we started. We've landed Ford, as I've touched on. These have been supported through government funding programs, or in general, the government funding is there to support these types of investments. And we're working on plenty more of these type of great announcements that will come through this year. And you really will see the progression as we realize our ambition to transition a world-class automotive sector. Hopefully I've touched on a few highlights that are relevant to the Northeast. The Northeast is really a powerhouse within our UK auto sector. Of course, opportunities through the Automotive Transformation Fund, which is really the flagship support program you can find on with our partners at the APC. Thank you very much. I guess I'm handing over to you now, Colin.
Thank you very much, Martin. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Colin Heron. I'm Professor of Practice at Newcastle University. I'm also a representative of the Faraday Institution, which Martin mentioned, in the northeast of England. My job as part of the Faraday Institution is to integrate the research that's happening in our region with the whole national picture of research. I also run a small consultancy within the university, so it's not for profit, which is called Zero Carbon Futures. And I've just created the Northeast Battery Alliance. So in the next few minutes, I'm just going to go through the activity that we are doing in the Northeast to support what is probably a lifetime opportunity in one of the world's biggest transformations to electrification. The Northeast Battery Alliance was created and launched last week, but it's been developed over quite a period of time. So what is it? We're working on the triple helix in the region that we are bringing together all the region's universities as one cohesive group. From this, we also have one of the nation's catapults for advanced materials. It's led by Newcastle University because we are a founding university of the Faraday Institution, and our total aim is to identify and build on the existing strengths of electrification, automotive, and advanced manufacturing. Personally, I worked for Nissan for 17 years, and I worked with the UK government to bring the Leaf to the northeast and the first Giga plant in Sunderland. We've got some clear objectives. When we see a large-scale manufacture of batteries in the northeast and supply chain, this is a very, very big challenge. We are talking around 60 gigawatts in 2 plants, which are about 30 kilometers apart. We are expecting, and we don't know the exact figures, around 10 to 12,000 jobs, about 4 billion investment, and a whole supply chain that has to be created. We also have to and are gearing up the 5 universities, all the colleges and training providers to provide the skills for what these people need. We also are working with industry to identify what research they need and what gaps we may have in the universities. And my role within Faraday is how do our universities in this region work with people like UCL, Oxford, Cambridge, Birmingham, etc. We have to also build engagement, identify what the challenges are and what the investment needs are. And then we talk to people like Martin and central government as one voice when we lobby government. It's very important, and we're doing this now, to work between academics and business and the public sector to shape collaboration projects. There's a lot of funding, as Martin explained, but what we have to have is the correct projects formatted in the correct way with buy-in. One of my jobs and my team is to identify where the funding is and, again, determine the national image for ourselves in the battery space. We have to look at future insights. What is coming? What may the battery plants make next? What supply chains may have to change? If we just go to the uniqueness of the Northeast, and I put 70 kilometers or 40 miles, within that small box, we have now 2 companies exploring lithium for mining. We have 2 lithium hydroxide plants about to be opened. We have Britishvolt and Envision both producing around 30 gigawatts when they're open. We also have 3 companies producing batteries or packing batteries in the region in addition. We have the largest car plant in the UK, which made the iconic Leaf and will be making the Aria. We also have off-road companies like Komatsu who are looking at hybrids, and we have the Hitachi Rail Factory who are also looking at battery trains with the supply from the region. The other area we're looking at is second life of batteries, recycling down to black mass. So within that box, we have the potential from mining of raw materials, processing raw materials, cell manufacture, pack manufacture, vehicle manufacture, second life use of batteries, and a full recycling capability. The research side, because we're part of the Faraday Institution and the 5 universities we brought together, we also have the Catapult, the Centre for Process Innovation. This is what is making the strength of the region and the Northeast Battery Alliance. So how does it function? Within the public sector, we have a thing called the Energy Catalyst, which looks at hydrogen and offshore, but we are the battery group. The battery group has myself and 2 colleagues and the Faraday Institution. Within the box, you can see the founding members, and we're also talking to companies like Johnson Matthey, Nissan, and Envision to join the group. We've broke all of our activity down into work groups, which, as you can see, cover mining, anode cathode production, battery cell, etc., through to recycle. Within each of those groups, we have an academic lead and we have an industry lead working on this. We've had 3 work groups with 3 industry leads and 90 academics. Currently, we have in the Alliance 160 academics who are now coming together to work on batteries. We are also expending a lot of time on life cycle analysis because it's important whatever we do is carbon neutral, and we have to have the skills across the whole agenda. We are also looking at the key skills of all 5 universities, and we will bring that together and produce one single output of the capability of all the universities. You don't need to read them. Most people will understand the basic capabilities we have there and what the academics are working on. Thank you very much. Over to Michelle.
Thank you. Sorry, it just took me a while to unmute there. So thanks, Colin. That was really interesting. And thanks everyone for coming along to this session today. So I'm going to be the last speaker. So if you do have questions, you can start popping them into the chat and we'll take those questions at the end. But I'm just going to cover a little bit about the Northeast and the kind of capabilities and assets that we have here over and above what's been discussed already, and talk about the scale and scope of the opportunity in the Northeast. So I think, as Colin's alluded to, with the arrival of Nissan in the 80s and their early interest in sort of electrification, you know, we really are a hotspot in the region. So we've seen a really significant increase in the battery and vehicle and electric vehicle sectors over the last few years, and we feel that this could create up to about 70,000 new jobs in the UK, and we are really well positioned to actually grow the supply chains, not just for our local companies, but also for companies nationally. We've got what we feel is a really comprehensive, but also quite unique asset base, and this allows us to kind of innovate and demonstrate solutions across the whole energy system within a sort of an EV sector, and thinking about it within the EV sector, but also any kind of sort of surface electrification of surface transport, but potentially beyond that as well. And this test bed is useful not just for companies in industry, but also for new companies, for new ideas and innovators, but also for policymakers as well. And the assets and expertise that we have goes through, as Colin sort of talked about, the whole life cycle. So it is from materials and formulation to the sort of second life of batteries, and then what we do with them afterwards. And I think that really makes us quite unique. So a little bit about the Northeast. We have a really good location in terms of good connectivity within the region. So we're in the northeast of England, so just south of Scotland, but we're situated on really good transport lines. So logistics are really excellent in the region. We have 4 deep sea ports, and it's through the ports that Nissan export a lot of their vehicles. So this is why we can serve European as well as domestic markets from our location. We've got excellent road and rail links as well, and good connectivity within the region. So it's a region where you can move goods and people around really easily. Colin also mentioned that we have we're seeing more producers get involved in the networks around sort of lithium. We have some old mine workings where we've dug boreholes and we've looked at sort of mine water energy, and there's quite a lot of lithium potential within those mines as well. So we are likely to be able to supply our own lithium from within the region. In terms of the kind of investment that we've seen, Martin mentioned the 11 billion of investment in electrification for across the UK. The Northeast has actually seen over 4 billion of that coming into the region over a 10-year period. So it's really been quite significant, particularly in that sort of electric vehicle production, but also battery development. And as a result of that, you know, a significant proportion of that has actually come in the last 2 years. So since 2020, there's been nearly 4 billion invested in the region. So we've really seen that accelerated. And that also means that we've seen an accelerated number of inquiries in peripherals around that. So more companies that are interested in the automotive and battery technology supply chains, the chemicals and formulations and materials, and particularly because some of the expertise that we have, not just within our universities, but within the companies that are located here as well. We have a wide range of recycling capabilities within the Northeast, and the recycling of battery and reusing of battery materials is really at the sort of forefront of our thinking. We're really sort of charging ahead around our net zero aspirations. And we also have a number of energy solutions linked to net zero and electrification. So we've got companies operating here who use second life battery to create microgrids for energy storage, and they've been able to commercialize that really rapidly. And we also have, as Colin mentioned, an energy catalyst that looks at net zero and decarbonisation right across a whole spectrum of technologies. And we also are seeing a really significant increase in interest from OEMs, and particularly from niche vehicles, and looking at different types of transportation methods. So in terms of our assets and capabilities, Colin's done an excellent job of giving an overview of our battery capabilities and how that's really coming together as a coherent unit and voice. But we have companies that are operating in those sectors and clusters, but also around EV. And that creates a huge amount of supply chain opportunities. And whether you're a company moving into the region who are looking to find a supply chain, or whether you're looking to enter those supply chain markets, there's a range of different ways of entering the market there. We've also got a number of companies that are really at the forefront of PEMD technology. And so the kind of capability and output that we already have in the Northeast is really strong. And I've also mentioned that sort of whole life cycle battery ecosystem. So it's a really from cradle to grave process. We have a number of expert centres, so a lot of our R&D capability is focused. We've got 21 catapults, research centres, and other capabilities in R&D, and 17 of them are focused on the kind of technologies that supports electrification. And we have an industrial innovation centre for power electronics, motors and drives. So the Driving the Electric Revolution program that Martin talked about, we've got an industry centre here that really looks at how you can apply that research and development and accelerate things into the market more quickly, and not just in EVs, but actually right across all forms of motorized technologies. So our sort of connected energy capabilities is another big sell for the region. The fact that we can connect people into renewable sources of energy and other types of technology creates a real buzz around the innovation that we can create here. So a little bit more about the kind of the base for the region. We are the most competitive region in terms of commercial property costs for automotive in the UK. So we compare favourably to all regions, and particularly if you look at some of the key other regions in the UK that do have automotive strength. So we compare favourably with Wales and with the West Midlands. And we do have quite a broad portfolio offering around the kinds of properties that you can locate into. And there's some real clusters where we do have development opportunities. So that could be if you're looking for a design and build type of opportunity, or really at the very early stage in terms of developing right from the outset, and then existing industrial facilities that can be converted. And these tend to cluster around some of our strategic locations. We've got great logistics capability, but we've got a portfolio of property that you can locate really close to some of the big OEMs like Nissan, but also around where we've got supply chain capabilities and logistics solutions. And we have also got our R&D facilities located in these areas as well. So the universities aren't sitting in their city centre campuses in ivory towers. They're actually out there working alongside industry in shared facilities and places where industry is actually operating. It's also worth mentioning that we are a development friendly region, so we're very open to having long-term discussions around how we design and plan our location around some of the industries that will support us into the future. And we have a benign planning system, so we've tried really hard to make sure that it's really seamless for companies. And just to give an example of that, when Britishvolt were looking at sites in the region, they were able to get a really accelerated, it was about 16 weeks to get their planning permission through. So we do work with industry to try and make sure that the planning system and the public sector works really well with them and alongside them. And again, we've got that excellent connectivity. So we've got really good integrated transport. So commuting times are excellent within the region, but also we've got really high broadband speeds as well. So those are the sorts of things that really add to the cost base for making decisions on locating in an area. Skills have already been mentioned a few times, and I think it's worth touching on that. So we do have a very long tradition of advanced manufacturing and manufacturing in the automotive sector, as well as its associated supply chain. So we do have a really good skills base. So it's productive, it's innovative, and we've got very low attrition rates, as well as competitive salary costs. And the provider base for skills in the region is very industry engaged. So universities do work alongside companies, but both our higher education and our further education colleges are really responsive to the provider base. And so they don't just sit alongside the companies that they're working with, but they also sit alongside the R&D and innovation assets to make sure that their skills are really at the forefront of the technology. And skills is very much embedded within that regional electrification system. So we've got regional and national leadership. So colleagues in the region sit on national panels to develop frameworks for future skills development and have that influence at the policy level as well. So companies can really get that competitive advantage by collaborating with our training providers, and they're very open to having discussions around how they can work with them, whether it's getting involved in undergraduate project setting, whether it's through placements, or whether it's actually influencing the design of the curriculum. In terms of the regional labour market, I've talked a little bit about the sort of highly skilled workforce that we have. There's about 116,000 people working in manufacturing roles, and we've got a workforce, a total workforce of about 1.2 million across the whole of the region. So these are people who are active in the labour market, and 70,000 or just under 70,000 of the people employed within manufacturing are actually in advanced manufacturing businesses. So that's about 6% of our total workforce in those specialist roles. And about 30,000 people, 25,000 people are employed within the automotive sector. And a really significant proportion of those are actually involved in the manufacturing process, and that's the second highest of any region in the UK. I also want to touch on the staff turnover rates. We've got excellent quality of life in the Northeast, and staff satisfaction tends to be very high. So we have low attrition rates in companies. We've got some of the lowest attrition rates in the UK. So that really does add to the kind of competitive advantage, and encourages companies to kind of invest in training for their staff for future growth. And then in terms of productivity is exceptionally high. Nissan has been Europe's most productive car plant for the last 7 years, and I think they plan to continue that. And that plant has never lost a day to industrial action. So it's we do have a very satisfied workforce. I've talked a little bit about our universities, but the scale of the provision that they offer that's associated with this sector is really quite significant. So there's over 300 advanced manufacturing related courses, and these are usually linked specifically to the job market in the region, and there are 29 university courses across our 5 universities that have a focus on engineering and technology for automotive. The colleges and the universities are very interested in conversations around developing strategic relationships as well, and a good example of that is Gateshead College, which have been a key training provider for Nissan and a number of its suppliers as well for several years, and they developed bespoke training packages. So it's not just about the off-the-shelf throughput of students, it's actually about how you can do dedicated training through dedicated facilities. So they've created a zero emissions centre of excellence. And then industry in the region tends to work together to look at some of the challenges around skills and help solve that as well. So we're thinking sort of further down the line as well. And we do partner with, we've got an Institute of Technology, which actually encourages universities and colleges to work together, so employers don't have to have multiple conversations with training providers. So in terms of the kind of support that we offer, Invest North East England is an inward investment agency, and we act as a concierge for companies that are looking to grow or expand into the North East. And we can provide support across a number of different areas. So as well as giving an overview of the region and helping just introduce you to the region, we can provide detailed advice on availability of land and property and costs, and we can benchmark that against other areas. We can provide a statistical analysis that gives you a really good understanding of the demographic, what infrastructure is there around the local labour market, and we can do delegations and take people around the region so they can have a look around and really get to know some of the key stakeholders and get involved in some of the key assets and facilities that we have. We do help with access to finance, and that can be, we will give you detailed advice on the availability of financial assistance and grants, but also put you in touch with potential investors that are located in the region or that work with our key sectors. And we can also provide soft landing options. So this can help you just make your entry into the Northeast market a little bit easier just while you're establishing your business. There's also support around human resources. We can do wage comparisons, look at training needs and recruitment, and then look at what the local market information is telling us. And then importantly, you know, when companies are locating here, they want to make sure that their key employees, the ones that are moving here, can settle in well. So we can provide that support for the employees and their families and help understand where the schools are, where they're, you know, how to support them in their housing needs and how family life works within the region. And we can also provide introductions to supply chain networks and other types of technological expertise. And any company that locates here will get a dedicated personal account manager that will then look after you once you've landed. Just in terms of financial incentives, Martin mentioned the Automotive Transformation Fund from UK government and other assistance that's available at a national level. So there's other things around export support, but also R&D, tax credits. So there's a range of different things at a national level that we can help you tap into, but we do also have some specific funds that are available for companies that are locating here. So Northeast Investment, Inward Investment Grant is for large scale investments, and potentially you could get 10% of your capital expenditure or about £5,000 per job created. It very much depends on the nature of the company and the nature of the jobs, but we'll have a conversation with you about that. There's another fund which operates in part of the region that's north of the Tyne, the River Tyne, and that offers grants of up to £1 million for new inward investments. So it's geographically limited, but it is quite an attractive offer. And then for smaller companies and for other types of businesses moving in here, we can look at there's often localized grants and incentives from individual councils that are located here. And then it's also worth mentioning that some of the sites that we've got are enterprise zone status, and that can offer business rates relief or access to enhanced capital allowances. I'm rapidly about to approach my time limit, so I'm just very quickly going to talk about some of our case studies. So Turntide Technologies have made 3 strategic acquisitions in the Northeast. They've purchased Hyperdrive, Avid and Borg Warner, and that's about £100 million worth of investment into the region. And they've really targeted these companies because it helps complete their transition. They're very keen on electrification, and so they've got a smart motor system that is used for commercial transportation, and this has really accelerated the technologies within the companies that they've acquired in the Northeast, have accelerated their sort of capability around that, and essentially giving them an end-to-end offering for the electrification of vehicles. And it also reduces the resource implications in terms of thinking about climate change and sustainability. And then Britishvolt, which Martin has mentioned as well. So this is going to be the UK's largest gigafactory, which will be located north of the River Tyne in Northumberland, southeast Northumberland. It will create about 3,000 jobs, but Britishvolt are also investing in a supplier park, and that will provide infrastructure for the supply chain companies that want to associate with that. They're very keen on having a sustainable focus, so they've got that access to renewable energy, and we as a region can connect into hydroelectric power from Scandinavia, which comes into the Port of Blyth, but also we've got access to the largest offshore wind farm at Dogger Bank. So as a region, we've got great access to renewable energy. Britishvolt are sourcing their supply internationally, and they've recently made a significant partnership with an Indonesian company to help bring some of their materials in, but they are also committed to that local investment. So they are encouraging their suppliers to co-locate and create resources, but they're also looking at how they can invest in skills in the long term. So they're getting very engaged in local communities. And they're also looking beyond surface transportation. So they've actually just secured additional investment from the maritime sector. So the chance to sort of decarbonise and go towards net zero will span a whole range of different sort of sectors and opportunities. So just to sum up, the opportunity in the Northeast is really quite significant, particularly around the supply chain opportunities for some of these larger companies, OEMs and battery manufacturers. Having said that, as an innovating region, there's real scope here to bring new products to market and to be part of this sort of ecosystem and community. So on that note, I will just finish there, but really happy to take questions. If you just want to post them in the chat, happy to take questions now. Just while we're waiting, I know that some of the questions that we've been asked at previous events have focused on particularly around skills and supply chain, and we know that sort of Nissan and Envision are really in the they're really at the stage now where they are looking to really formalize their supply chain. So one of the things we have in the region is an organization called Supply Chain Northeast, and the companies can really utilize that, and they'll run specialized events so that can work for companies that are kind of looking to enter that market. But Nissan and Envision and Britishvolt are both sort of really looking now at what their requirements are and doing that mapping exercise. So we're anticipating actually that we'll see more coming into the market around that. Martin, I don't know if you want to comment on some of the sort of supply chain opportunities.
Yeah, fine. Thanks, Michelle. I mean, we work really closely with yeah, with all those companies, with Britishvolt, with Envision, with Nissan, particularly to try and support that forward look. So it's absolutely critical for the industry and for the wider industrial sector to be long-term competitive, to be able to get materials close at hand, particularly if you look at let's say the way that the global industry is developing, certain stresses within those global markets, and particularly with the situation in our own continent right now, the value of having lithium hydroxide and lithium carbonate produced in Wilton on the Tees Valley, the value of having cathode production or anode graphitization or processing of natural graphite close to home is really quite compelling. And there's certainly a lot of investor appetite to do that in the UK, and that's something we're really pleased to be very involved in. Yeah, it's a great opportunity, and there are others. I'm talking again about batteries there, and we have these type of discussions, and we all talk about batteries, and batteries are critical, right? But there's also similar opportunities for the Turntide business, for other businesses in power electronics, motors and drives. There's a whole range of opportunities that companies can engage with.
Okay, thanks for that, Martin. I had a question on skills, and I was going to direct it to Colin, but actually somebody's put a very good question into the chat, which is around the sort of the lower level electrification skills, so those more technician level.
That's me as well. I can do that.
Great, so I'll pass that one to you. So yeah, are there enough courses in the region providing this focus on electrification?
Certainly. Within the UK, we have a thing called the UK Electrification Skills Framework. So what we've done by working with all the car makers, the universities, the colleges, the schools, is develop a set of curriculum across the whole country. This means that somebody, for instance, who works in Nissan could go and work in Ford, or they could go and work in any other remit and work on the production line or do repairs. The Institute of Motor, I forgot the name, IMI, sorry, the Institute of Motor Institutions, I think it's called. They've got a set of courses which are set out from level 1 to 4. We have 11 colleges in the Northeast region. All the colleges are gearing up to deliver all these packages. So we don't have a concern. We're also making sure, this is important, this is where the universities do come in, that the universities are dropping the knowledge and the new research down to the lecturers to pass on to level 2, 3, 4. So the universities recognize that they have a big role to play, but we are also developing CPD courses so people can take short courses, short modules to allow, for instance, mechanical engineers to learn basic electrical theory. So we are confident that we've set the framework in place and we can cope with the skills for the number of people. And I wish I could remember what IMI stood for. Institute of Motor.
Institute of the Motor Industry.
Thank you. Institute of the Motor Industry. We're working with them on their courses. Thank you, Latham.
No problem.
That's great. That's really comprehensive. And I think it's also worth mentioning that the Northeast has had a pilot for skills for careers guidance, and really is looking at kind of revolutionising the way in which we do that sort of that early intervention, for really letting people know about the new jobs and the new sectors that are emerging. So we've got a really good reach into secondary schools, but also into primary schools to kind of alert people, because it's important that we kind of fill the funnel, then we develop the interest in these technologies and these industries. So we're hoping that we're not just sort of looking at who's already in the skills market, but who's actually in who's going to be in it in 10, 15 and 20 years.
Britishvolt have actually started a foundation, and they are working with the schools, and we are starting at school children level through STEM, and it's great work. And the Faraday institution supports it with great initiatives such as Battery in a Box, which is for teachers to run lessons on how batteries work at a basic level.
That's great. Thanks, Colin. So I think that was a better question and a better answer than I was expecting from my own skills question. So I think we'll leave it there. I'm just going to go around and just see if are there any other comments or anything that anyone else would like to add before we sort of wrap up the session. No.
I don't want to throw Martin into it, but Martin, you mentioned like funding through like ATF and Innovate UK. Could you maybe just touch on like some of the like typical timelines for funding? Because sometimes funding can get, you know, really held up and delayed. But just in terms of a company that applies and like how quickly decisions are made.
Yeah, no problem at all, Latham. You know me, I'm always up for any question, so there's no questions to avoid with me. I mean, look, these things take some time. So you may be looking at 6 months, you may be looking at slightly longer. But the thing I would say that's distinct now, for example, within investment opportunities within the EU, once a decision is made in the UK, it's committed, because it's not referred to the Commission, and as people will know that are on the call, there's been a number of investment opportunities within the EU where funding has either been called in or cancelled or blocked, and things have sat around for a number of years, let's say. So there is a certain amount of paperwork. There's an awful lot of people that know the process in the UK. It's an extension of the Regional Growth Fund process. Which it requires an amount of dedication, it requires an amount of work, and look, Latham, as you know, I'm a business guy, right? So when I talk to businesses and they say, oh, there's an awful lot of paperwork for us to do, and I say, well, it's amazing what you need to do for £1 million or £10 million or £100 million, right? So for that level of funding, there's obviously a bit of work to do, but it really isn't, you know, it isn't beyond the normal company, let's say financial controller to do, maybe with a little bit of support from a consultant that knows the process very well. It's not so much.
Thanks, Martin. I think I just wanted to emphasize there that you know, in spite of all that, it is actually a fairly efficient process compared to what can happen in some other countries.
That's really good, helpful information to add on at the end. I think we'll wrap it up there. We will be sharing the slide deck with people who've attended, and feel free to have a look through that, and do come back to us if you do have any other questions. But hopefully you've learned a little bit more about the kind of the opportunity and the pace at which the UK is moving towards this agenda, decarbonising transport, but also a little bit more about the Northeast. So whether you are a company yourselves or whether you work with companies, please do feel free to get in touch with Invest Northeast England if you're interested in the Northeast and want to know a little bit more about the region. Colin would, I'm sure, be more than happy to talk to you about the work that Battery Alliance are doing and the other things that he's involved in. But also Martin and Latham are there, you know, as a national sector lead, but also as a territorial lead for the US and other parts of North America. If you want to sort of follow up in that area. And yes, we will be sharing the slides after this session. So thank you all very much for joining us, and I think we're finishing just about on time.